On this computer. Awesome. So welcome everyone to this first meeting regarding the core modules developers group, which is a subgroup of the developers group for taking care of the modules that were formerly provided with DNN. So this is our first meeting. I prepared an agenda. I didn't put everything that I wanted to talk about here because I don't want the meeting to be like a 3 hours thing. But before the recording, I already took the names of the persons present. The agenda I have for today, well, there's no minutes to approve from last meeting. For the open forum, after reading this, if you want to add anything, we're going to add it in the addendum. And if we have time, we'll go through that. If we don't, we can push that to the next meeting. The first point I wanted to touch was legal. I don't know who can answer those questions. I have asked a little bit around and still don't have an official answer. So that's something we would have to discuss here. Then I would like to discuss if there's specific maintainers for some projects or if we just work all on everything. I'd like to discuss if we have any specific merge and release processes that are already in place or that we want to put in place, and a couple modules that I would need help with. I would like to see who can add to that. So is there anything you guys would like to discuss other than what I put here?
I think it's nice for the first meeting, and if some things come up, we can do it at the end.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for organizing the meeting.
Yes.
First of all.
My pleasure.
Yes.
So the first thing we need to discuss is legal. So first, there's a naming. Most of the modules have DNN dot something, which I think illustrates that those modules were part of DNN, but it's not the case for all of them. Also, when DNN used to provide those modules, they were part of the core, and they were named core modules. Then what happened, they gave those modules to the community, and they started being called community modules. And other modules joined as community modules, people who wrote modules and just gave them to the community. So there's not a clear distinction between the ones that came with the platform and the ones that were just added like this, given by community members. And then they were put in the DNN Forge, and for some time they were called Forge modules, and other modules joined the Forge too. So I think we should find a way to separate the ones that came from DNN with the DNN platform from the other free modules that are also part of the community. So any ideas on what would be a good way for doing that?
First, let me ask a question first. Why do you want to make a distinction between the original core modules, because they were community modules at the start?
Yes.
And the modules that come around, like to sexy content or open content or open store, which are also community type modules. Why should we make a distinction between the different ones?
Because the ones that came with the platform, people have them installed regardless if they wanted them or not. They came with the platform. So anyone who has DNN4, DNN5 and wants to upgrade, which is not rare,
No.
I think we should have a bigger effort on keeping those upgradable. I'm not saying they have to be awesome, but they need to be at least upgradable to not block people from upgrading. So I think they should be isolated and tested on each new DNN release. And to do that, we kind of need to group them. So we have, a unit of modules that, okay, we need to test them. There's a new version of DNN. We need to test them and make sure they work.
Right, that alludes to something. I think you're getting to probably something that is under the water, but needs to be brought out in the open. Is that the distinction we're making here is, and this is not wrong in any way, because this is what happened beforehand, is that there is a group of modules that we as a community take charge of, and that we as a community stick a badge on, like, okay, this was tested. So to take the example, Ernst Peter, of, for instance, Too Sexy Content. So Too Sexy Content is maintained by TooSick, and they are end responsible on whether it works on 921 or not. And we are presumably not in the business of going to try to maintain Too Sexy Content for TooSick. So I think it's a very good question. I think that also drives or informs the way we go about this, in my opinion.
Okay, it's valid. Yeah. So you think the responsibility lies with the community and not with individual persons or companies who provide those other type of modules? Okay, fair.
Exactly, just like the platform.
Yeah,
Right.
and given too that now even DNN is community driven, so it's community first, and so I think we have a responsibility to not make them awesome. And you know, there's a fine line too in cutting sales from commercial modules too. So I don't want to get anybody mad because we have better free modules than the available commercial ones too. So
right.
Main goal is upgradable. On the second phase, maybe, you know, make them like at least every module be minimally responsive. That's something that's usable. But the philosophy on these modules was always to be a simple, small module that does a little thing, you know. And some of them are used a lot. Like the form and list module is very popular. There's the events module, which is also very popular, and there's better out there, but the fact that it came with the platform, they are in use.
Okay, agree.
Okay, now, what are the ideas of, I know I have an Excel list of them. I know, Ernst, you are working on something to catalog them. I would like, maybe not now, because there's still work to be done to make them, you know, presentable, all of them. But when they are, I think we should have some visibility, maybe from the awareness group. I don't know if we could have a page on DNN software website that catalogs these. I would like to update also, I think it's a blog post on the DNN suggested upgrade path. I'd like to update that, including those modules. So, you know, you want to upgrade from DNN4, you need to, there's at some step, you need to remove the XML module and reinstall after the upgrade. And there's a series of events, you know, that allows you to upgrade, including those modules.
And Peter has some news on this.
Yeah, I'm working together with Timo and Peter and Declan, because my idea is that the visibility of open source module for DNN is not enough. So I started collecting the names of the modules, the location where you can find the source, the location where you can find the downloads. And currently Timo has created a page on dnnconnect.org, because that's much simpler than on dnnsoftware.com. And Timo has finished today a possibility to enter those 4 or 5 fields to start with. And my idea is that we collect all places where you can find open source modules, or better saying open source extensions for DNN. And at some point in time, we can generate any kind of output if we have the information about that. My ideal solution would be the store, because I think that's the place where people should find extensions, whether they are free or commercially available. But I've been working with the store a bit, and I don't like it. So I started collecting it, and I think I've collected the first 75 or 100 open source extensions.
Awesome.
And if the page is ready, we can just publish it. People can go to dnnconnect.org and find the releases. And later on, we can extend this particular module so that it also contains version compatibility, release notes, updates, and so forth. I've looked into GitHub. GitHub has a nice API to find information about repositories. You can retrieve the number of downloads, you can retrieve the latest releases, you can retrieve the people who are working on particular repositories. And my idea is that we define a module, a forge type modules with for example, plugins that can retrieve the information once you have the primary key to find the first part of this particular module. So
Awesome.
that will come in the next, let's say, 1 or 2 weeks. I finish the first 100, and then we can start bragging about it and make a blog post. And I can generate probably also HTML, so we can import the results in a blog post or anywhere else. But on the longer term, I would like to have a page on dnnsoftware.com, but probably going to take a little bit longer. That's the first part.
I think we should have them to a nice status before doing that, so people don't see, you know, that 1/3 of them are broken or something.
Okay.
But it's awesome.
That can be added. That can be added afterwards, because I start with just collecting where can you find a particular open source extension, and you find the URL, you find the download, and then later on we can extend it and preferably automatically retrieve the additional information, version compatibility, number of downloads, people working on it, new releases, and so forth. I tried it with the store, but the store is not fit for that yet. So that's the first part. I really like your idea of adding the core modules into the release path or the roadmap. I really like that, because then the core modules will get more attention again, and people probably going to find it and be more happy, because I read a number of times that people are really happy that you're updating a number of the modules already, so they are compatible with DNN 9.2.
Yeah, because I follow that a lot, and I always have a smile when I see, I think from DNN 6 to 7, you need to remove the XML module. But I mean, if I'm using it, right? So I always find it funny. And in your data definition, would there be a field for either the maintainer or to something that we could tag? Okay, this one is a core module.
Of course, because it's created currently with the open content, and you can define any kind of field additionally. But I start with what I call an MVP, minimal viable product. Just where can you find a particular module with a particular name? Let's start with that. And once we have the primary key or the link to that, the additional information can be added afterwards, preferably automatically.
Excellent. So I'm gonna put here that Peter, sorry, not Peter.
EPT.
EPT.
That's for short.
Is working on.
I call it a library or a repository or a forge or a list, whatever. Yeah. And in the next 1 or 2 weeks, I probably have the first 100 extensions listed, just as a reference and starting point.
Can you hear me?
Awesome.
Yeah. A couple. Sorry for interrupting. It's just slightly related to that. A couple days ago, I was discussing with Sasha. Sasha is the builder of the open content and open forms. I was discussing with him the adding support to their modules for workflow. You know that DNN supports workflow like it does on the HTML module, but it's the only one that supports that. So I needed that for a client, and I was asking him if we could do that on open content and open forms. And I was thinking later on that if we manage to get that there, why then not improve the other modules on that? Because I'm pretty sure that most of you have had the need for example, of publishing a document on the documents module that needs to pass some approval steps or an event or whatever. So my goal on the meeting today would also be how we can get the current modules into the next step. So having similar API and improving them in whatever, in whatever aspects that we can think about. And related to that, I've sent an email to Ash if they could donate back to the platform the module that they have in Evoke for managing the
workflows. Yeah.
I haven't got any reply from him on that, so I will keep insisting. If not, I think that this would be a good project for us, the community, to take the lead on, to build something for this one.
The workflow you're talking is to bring back in the platform the workflows for modules, right?
Yes, right.
Okay. Yeah, that would be something nice. that we could be useful for that, actually.
Yeah, and that's what is mentioned here on the chat window. Stefan Kuhlman created something similar for the sites groups a long time ago, and that's been probably a bit just forgotten somewhere else. So maybe between this group that we're achieving here now, we could improve that kind of slightly less known modules.
Yeah. Although the workflow principles in Evoke as well as DNN are very limited, in my opinion.
Well,
it's a very simple type of workflow.
Yeah.
Only straightforward and just steps back. So it's useful if you say, can we use that, let's say, to manage the process around core modules? I think that's useful, especially if the modules are stored in an open content module, the identification of the different modules or extensions. But the workflow principle in DNN itself is very simple, in my opinion. Yeah.
Well, and that's probably another
discussion. It's probably another discussion, but the interesting thing is, in a more broader point, is that there used to be, I mean, there was product differentiation, or there still is, between Evoke and DNN platform, but it's true that there are things in the platform that have no UI, because it was seen as a extra feature of Evoke. And I think now in the DNN v3 phase, we've got to go back to DNN Corp and say, look, we think it's really silly that you keep those modules in Evoke when we have it all over the platform, right, in the code and in the API.
Right. I see that Clint writes in the chat window that DNN Corp doesn't mind that people adding stuff back in the platform.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's why there is the window of opportunity now to bring this up.
Yeah. But the best point would be that we get the Evoke part and adapt it so that it functions in the DNN platform as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of building a new one ourselves.
Question for Clint now. Clint, do you think it makes sense that I keep asking Ash for this kind of things, or we just go ahead and build our own solution for the community?
Well, so I mean, it's really about how you would like to best go about it. For example, Mitchell wanted to really negotiate hard for the caching provider, and at DNN Connect he did. And so Andy was like, okay, we'll move that down to platform. If you guys think, I would go whatever is the most efficient route. If you think that you would save time by, pressing Ash to get whatever code you need down into the platform, I would go that route. Or if you think you could build it from scratch faster, then it may be better to go that route. I mean, Andy is like, when you hear him talk, he's like, the platform should, be able to, be a good solution for anybody that's wanting a website. He does not want to compete with like features in Evoke versus features in the platform. He's on a whole different, like, we're going to buy all these companies and then you get access to the softwares. So I don't think there's a wrong way. I would go whichever way is the most efficient.
I think this is also part of the discussion in the technology group, because it's, I think we just need to speak to a higher order outset, which is Evoke should become, like the super distribution, i.e. all of their stuff is extensions, basically, and not features that are in DNN platform, but then finally exposed. It should really become a detached solution from the platform, in my opinion. That would be, but that's, I think, more of a discussion to have.
Yes, let's go back to the core modules.
Yes, let's go.
It's an interesting discussion, and as it's what Vincenz mentioned, that if the open content has been extended with workflow, and we have a list of all the open source extensions available, and some of them we want to do some workflow around because they want to be upgraded or want to be new documentation or samples, we can add that as in the workflow for those particular modules. That would be correct.
I will keep the discussion with Sasha on that and bring back to this group.
Great.
And if small parentheses, we're trying to maintain those modules, but I also see a migration to new stuff. So if liquid content, when it comes to the platform, if some modules could be migrated to that could be a solution too. So for some of those old ones,
right?
But that's something would discuss when it's available.
Right.
So next point would be copyright on the modules, copyright and license. I run into a couple of projects moving them from Codeplex to GitHub that didn't have everything DNN. So one instance here is the repository module. It has the Good Dogs logo somewhere, and it has perpetual motion interactive systems in the code. You know, it's still copyright DNN by this company, and there's a couple instances like this. It's just one example. Now, to answer this question on what we should do with that, I'd like to have a definitive answer from DNN. I don't think it's something we as a community can decide on.
First of all, I don't think that anyone cared about these particular comments at the start of a particular source code. People forgot to change that. And Perpetual Motion is the original company of Sean. And he donated the source modules into DNN Corp. And the license itself is all MIT. So if you talk about the license, it's MIT. If you talk about copyright, essentially it only says leave the copyright in the top of the module, but you can do anything that you would like to do with the source there from here. Anything you like to do.
Totally.
Yeah, that's as far as I know.
Exactly. So this point, it has been discussed too in another meeting, and all I heard from which is I agree, but it's all I think this, I think that. So I just would like to get from DNN, okay, what you guys think, you are correct, go ahead and leave it as is, or no, this has to be taken out, or I just would like to have it from DNN because we are not legal advisors for DNN. So, but I don't think there's anyone here who can say, yeah, I'm 100% sure, and we do it this way. So I think this needs to be pushed until we get an answer.
So I have a question about this. What does the .NET Foundation, how does that play into this whole thing? Because platform is now under .NET Foundation. These by association should probably fall under that. So whatever we are doing on platform, as far as I can see, we just do the exact same thing on any of the original core modules. Any new module efforts can follow a same pattern or not.
Can we
I know it comes across as an opinion, but I'm saying that the .NET Foundation technically owns the copyright to the source code now, right?
Maybe then a best way or a better way to approach someone would be through the .NET Foundation. They should have some legal advisors there that could help us on that.
That's what I think too.
Okay.
Either that or we just choose to adopt the exact same thing that has been done on DNN platform regardless of whether or not it's right.
Correct.
Awesome. So
I mean, to me, this could just be a can of worms that we don't have to open is really what I'm saying, because nobody, for one, nobody's looking at it. Number two, I know none of us want to take the liability of that, but at the same time, it's kind of like asking forgiveness rather than permission.
Right. Yeah.
On this, and make some assumptions, and then we clearly document those assumptions. And then if anybody ever comes back, then we know what we assumed and can talk out of it. I don't think there should be a holdup is really what I'm saying. It's important.
It's not a holdup. It's just something that I'd like to have a word from the person that would be in trouble if there's copyright issues, right?
And I don't think that person exists right now. So
correct.
Well, if I look at the source code or platform itself, it's just the standard copyrights there. There's nothing changed as far as I can see from previous version.
Exactly.
It still lists .NET.nuke.com even, .NET Nuke Corporation in the copyright, and that's not valid. Nobody has ever edited these codes. Lines in the beginning comment codes.
It's a bit of a moot point. It's all boilerplate license code. I did I use DNN Connect as a vehicle for this kind of stuff. Why? Because I felt that some people might be hesitant to contribute to a project if they saw my name somewhere in, in the blurb. So it's like, okay, you know what? Just stick DNN Connect into it, then it becomes part of us, right? Now, there is no vehicle called DNN Community, unfortunately, right? There is only DNN Connect because that actually is this deposed here. We could see, if we could use DNN or we could use DNN Connect, or whether we create a new entity for this if you want to keep things neutral.
Okay, but I think what David mentioned, we should link to what the .NET Foundation does, and that's a good advice. Yeah.
Okay. No problem. So the license right now on these modules is a boilerplate that we can just copy from one to the other. They're all MIT licenses anyway.
Yes.
Right.
Correct.
And if you have the GitHub repository and you have a licensed file in the root, you will see in the listing of repositories what the different licenses are, and they're all MIT licenses.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Exactly, because they're all supposed to be business friendly. That's
right.
That was the idea.
Okay. Another discussion we kind of started on another meeting with the DNN Fried was on the subject of contributor license agreement that is required on the platform. The discussion was about the same thing. We don't think that it's required because it's not something that's going to get packaged in commercial module that gets sold. They're all free. So if you contribute, it's a free project, and so that was the general thought. Does everybody agree with that?
I remember for the past times that I had to sign a certain agreement when I added code to particular modules, even the core modules. So I think what the CLA is for DNN platform should also be something for the community people if people are donating or codes or changes to that. And because
how
CLA
on GitHub, if you take any open source project on GitHub and you do a pull request on that project, there's at no point do I ever sign something. So it's basically the risk of whoever accepts the commit.
It's not true anymore for a platform. If you
yes,
want.
but the reason it's true for platforms is because that is in of itself being rolled up into a commercial product that is paid for. So none of these modules are applied to that. If somebody chooses to do that, that's on their own. But it is not part of the same, kind of organizational flow. So CLA would not be required.
I would add a blurb of text. Maybe that is something we can look at, to have a blurb of text on every GitHub repository for the module that says, in contribution that you agree to donate your code, basically.
Okay.
Okay. I agree with all that. My thought, though, is what if in a couple years, those modules that were in the past with the platform get back into the platform, and then through this get back into Evoke?
That's when you cross the bridge. We'll get to that. Cross that bridge when we get there, kind of thing, because then it becomes part of the platform, and then it rolls under that purview, and it's not a separate module at that point.
I would consider that chance to be less than 0.01%.
I would agree.
Okay. Okay, next subject. Are there specific maintainers on some projects that are concentrated on working on some modules, or we just work on everybody together?
I for sure have 2 or 3 modules that I've been working with. And that is events and reports. And I think I did something on announcement and links and as well, but events and reports are the ones that I've been working most of the time on.
Yeah.
I would say that instead of everyone working on everything, it's Ernst Peter working on everything and we as watching.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, we used to have certainly, one person who was end responsible for a module.
Yeah,
exactly.
And that kind of, that promoted that person also into a kind of a core team, into the core team actually back in the day. I think we have to kind of take the best ideas from that time and move forward with it today. What worked and what didn't work back in those days in terms of the dynamics of the development of a module.
Okay.
One thing that for sure didn't work was too much bureaucracy when modules need to be approved and reviewed and that and that and that. And
it's actually the next subject. So we're having Ernst, which is a little more attached to these two, and other than that, we just work everybody on whatever needs work.
I'm free to do anything else, but I think if I talk about events, I think I started in 2006 or something like that. And there have been various contributors, there are various people who worked on it. It started about 4 or 5 people, and I'm the one that is left in the end. But because of that, sometimes you get a one-time street where your vision is limited. So it helps if sometimes somebody else picks a module as a team lead.
So I had the blog module.
Yep.
And the news feeds module, and I'm proposing to take charge of the map module. Right. I think that covers the ones that I was responsible for.
And Eric VB did the announcements module, I think. So there were a number of people who were some point in time created something.
That one as well, an announcements back in the day.
Yeah.
With Eric.
I'm sorry, who was that on the announcement?
Eric VB.
Eric VB. I don't remember. I think it's like this.
No, with capital.
Eric, yeah, exactly.
I think
VB.
Announcements. It's not, like it's only that person who works on it or anything like that. It's just.
No, it never was. It never was.
No, if I know that some people, if people know that Eric VB is more concentrated on working on the announcements, we're not going to go merge stuff without talking to him. What do you think of
No, obviously,
which is the next subject?
Exactly, but let's walk through some more. Stefan, you were the last one to work on, I believe, XML.
Yes.
And from a list or not?
No, well, the last action happened from Daniel.
Okay.
But I was added a few features to format list. I passed it all over to Timo and Stefan for a couple of years ago, but no action happened. So.
Yeah, there were some action because they were angry that I moved the module from Codeplex to GitHub.
Actually, so for the XML module, there's one project missing because there was a side project which had some providers. For example, a provider for the XML module to go to extract data from format list or from reports, and which has a few more options to handle and render data.
Mm-hmm.
And this is now all gone and has to be recreated. But I can take care of that. But I would not place that directly in the XML module. It should be a decision to install these providers.
Okay.
Okay, and what do you think in the module description? The README that gets under that we put the name of the current I don't know. Let's call them curators. Someone who's a little bit more attached to that module. That way we don't go and merge without asking that person for a review.
For me, it's not a problem if I had made a suggestion about the structure of the teams and the rights in the DNN community organization in GitHub.
Yes.
And my idea, you have a limited number of people who process pull requests for the different modules. And if somebody really wants to own a particular extension himself, he is the one who is only one who's able to do the pull request. And you just can manage it by rights. I wouldn't make it much difference. I don't find a problem if somebody else merges pull requests in reports or events or whatever, because the people who will be able to merge and accept pull requests are the persons who I trust doing the right things in there. I don't mind if other people are doing it at the same time. I get the reviews, I get the mails about things happening. Excellent. The more people who are able to merge and process pull requests, the better it is for me. I think
that the question here, Ernst Peter, is maybe if Daniel is that, for example, imagine there is a group like the 10 or something of us who manage the whole process. If you are responsible for the events, would that be okay for you if someone else like Daniel just go there and merge something?
Yeah, because I trust Daniel or the ones who are able to do pull requests. I trust them that they are doing the right things.
Yeah, but my question mainly here is on the direction of the module. You might be, as a leader of the module, thinking on one direction, and if he merges something that is not on that direction, there might be some conflicts in there.
Yeah, I totally agree that
way.
Even myself, I know not to merge something that is not obviously, right, but exactly what you say, if I see something, oh, that looks nice, let's merge it, let's publish a release, and there was actually a maintainer and he didn't want to do it that way, or he had a better idea in mind. I think the ones that have specific curators, it should be marked somewhere so that we know, okay, here's what I'd like to do, please approve it.
I think that here the rule of thumb should be there is a leader of the project, so anything should be first addressed to that person. If that person is completely disappeared and out of contact, we should at least leave the last word to the maintainer of the project.
Exactly.
Yeah, I also think that you shouldn't obviously someone should be replaced if they're no longer active on a project. But I do feel strongly that there is at least someone who has some kind of a vision of where whatever module is going, right? And what is pertinent and whatnot. I mean, in terms of bug fixes, I completely agree with Ernst Peter. You trust a number of people, bug fixes will go in and whatever. But if someone comes along and changes the way that, categories are implemented in the blog module, all of a sudden we're in a new realm, right? And you might need some discussion, and you do have an end responsible who says, yeah, this is a good idea. Let's.
Okay.
So what if we take what I wrote here and we put the persons that want to maintain this in the module README? Current maintainer is Peter Dunker, and we as a group know that if we want to change something before publishing a release or merging a pull request, we tag him as a reviewer. Merge it in if you kind of agree with that.
Yeah.
And if there's no response for months, well, we need to change the maintainer.
Exactly.
Or remove it.
Exactly.
Okay, awesome.
I have a question that I'm not sure if it's the right moment to discuss or not. But for example, there is one module that's not listed here, which is the feedback module.
Mm-hmm.
My question is that, does it make any sense to keep that module going on when we have something like OpenForm, which is far better than that, and it is still, again, open source?
For upgrades.
No, I think it's a good question from Vincent, because I think OpenForms is much better than feedback. What we could define, if we say, okay, we're going to retire feedback, that we define a way how people can upgrade or migrate to a new module that we say that is a better version. Because the same is true for store. The store, DNN.store, hasn't been maintained for 3 or 4 or 5 years, and there are a couple of really far better store modules like OpenStore and we should stop wasting our time to fix an old one. But we could provide information or way of working, or maybe an upgrade path, or maybe some code, so people can upgrade to that new, better module.
My point on that is that I don't think it makes sense, for example, to maintain something like the feedback. I wouldn't even consider myself installing feedback on any new website.
Right.
Just use OpenForm or any else, or even, I don't know, Too Sexy, whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe we should, before publishing all those modules, discuss if there is anyone that should be just retired.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's good as long as we provide migration documentation on the project or on
for a
DNN
store, it's
upgrade
going to be
path.
very hard, right? So
I know.
If you take the DNN store, that's probably a bridge too far. The forum is a similar headache.
The forum had migration instructions from DNN forum to active forums.
Okay.
I cannot find them, but I know they exist.
All right, but anyway, for the store, I think we have to just be brutally honest and say, look, there's not going to be an upgrade path for you, but there are now tons of better stores out there.
To continue, in the chat, a number of people are mentioning old and new and forms. I think what we should be able in the later rounds, when the repository of available modules becomes available, and we have something like a download card, that can help us also to define whether particular modules should be maintained or not. If a particular module, maybe it's a wrong one, let's suppose that the feedback form has been used 1,000 times downloads in the last 3 months, then we should do something about it. But if the feedback module hasn't been downloaded for 3 years or by 3 or 4 persons, then it's, I think, a valid conclusion. Let's make it an old one and provide information how people can migrate. Because I see something, form a list, really, it can be replaced by open content, nice, by two-section content as well. But I think there are a large usage of form and list currently. So if you're going to replace that or make an upgrade, we should document something and how people can migrate to the other ones. If it is, if you talk about open content, open form, those are not community modules. Those are modules for Sasha. Two-section content is a module from TwoSig. So those either we advise, but then it becomes a problem from the community because we lose a community module and we point to a module from somebody else. So that's really something that has to be discussed.
Yeah, okay.
So I sort of agree with that. I mean, in the sense of, I think you mentioned form and list being very heavily, used. I think that could also be said true about a lot of these modules, but they aren't being actively downloaded, right? So what is actually the criteria for, really?
Yeah, but it might be because they are not downloaded because they are not actual anymore. But if people upgrade to make them work on the DNN 9.2, it might be that people are getting
exactly that
again. Yeah,
that was kind of my point as I was trying to drive to that, because I think the work here is actually we're going to see some activity with the downloads because now they have options. Because I know we have quite a few clients that are using a lot of these old modules. I don't know why, but they are. And we have to deal with the upgrade problems as well. So I think we'll probably see more activity now that there's options.
Yeah.
Awesome. So anything else we want to discuss in merge and release process, or we kind of agree what I put here? We're going to mark the current maintainers, ask them for review, and if there's no answer for a long time, we just go ahead and move on.
Right.
Cool.
Is there any other module pending on that list?
So far, it's what I've seen. I know there's some chat in text.
I'm missing the documents there, for example.
Yeah, you're missing.
Yeah, do we have someone?
That's Mitch Sellers.
Mitch Sellers, but I think he's agreed to just migrate that over. I guess he would still be listed as the maintainer, though.
Yeah, let's first get a list of who's currently.
Just put the names of the modules, probably.
And then we'll we'll work out later where it goes.
Then there is feedback.
Feedback would be by...
I don't know.
That's a good one. I think that's still like Lee Pointer or someone like that.
I think it actually is. I was going to say that, but I was scared to say it.
What if I put a blog post asking that question?
Okay, there is a big list here from.
I have more.
Wiki.
Those are most of the repositories that are currently in the DNN community organization. And some of them from elsewhere, because you see DNN Map, and there is another version of Map available in the DNN Connect environment. So there is a little bit split out.
Gallery.
Yeah.
Okay,
The
so
galleries, currently the repository for gallery is empty. That is because we're still working on getting the download
I
from.
thought that was Will Stroll who was in charge of the.
He had the media module.
Media module, right?
I'm not sure if he had the gallery or not. No, he had the media.
We had the media, but that has vanished.
Well, it's only on the archive.
He's maintaining on his own GitHub, but that's another opportunity, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. My thought would be to list them all in a blog post, in Slack channels, and people who are maintaining a specific project, who have an attachment to a specific project, come forward. You will be the maintainer, and you will be the final approval on pull requests on that. Would that be nice?
Well, I'm not sure whether people come forward. You must ask who are stepping backward, and the ones who don't care, don't mind, they'll be left in front. Yeah, because a number of the people are well maintaining it, but would rather leave it to somebody else.
Because if we have a curator, that curator needs to, in a decent timeline, accept the pull requests, accept to publish a release.
Yeah. Well, it also will
have no time for it, then we move on our pace.
It will also immediately become clear if there's anyone still using the module, right?
Yeah, because what I'm trying to avoid happening is that we assign a specific maintainer, and then we work hard and put pull requests in there, and it stays there for 1 year without being approved. So I think if people have no time to approve them, they're not curators.
No, it's for sure. And I think already I can tell you that probably Eric is, I don't know if he's going to do the announcements module, so to speak, because he's no longer with us, so to speak. So,
Okay, so I'm going to do that, and whatever comes back from people who have an attachment to a specific module, we'll make a list from there and mark them as curators on those repositories.
Yeah.
Awesome. So that covers this and that. Actually, this is on the wrong point. That would be here. Awesome. Then, I don't know if there's anyone here who can test and give a report back on the status of the current Active Directory Authentication Provider. I have no experience with that.
The current Active Directory Provider is created in the visualbasic.net. And it's very, very old module. It's using the old DNN methods, deprecated methods.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's not always 100% compatible with new DNN versions, DNN 8, DNN 9. It's really hard to maintain that plugin. Because lots of source code doesn't do anything. I read the source code, and what I think it's better to create a new module than Yeah, that's what I think.
One discussion that happened on Facebook was on what is it, Glenton Active
Yeah.
Directory products. I think is one of the biggest sellers of those modules.
Well, Barry's involved with them, so that's why Barry's the
Okay.
expert actually in this group on this whole thing.
Awesome. So
I'm using that authentication provider in our company, and it is still working. But I totally agree to Barry. The source is awful. You can't detect. There's so many sample codes copy paste in, and you don't see what is used and what not.
Mm-hmm. So what happens someone who has a website with that module active and working and wants to upgrade?
He has to go to Glenton and buy a real Active Directory provider.
Okay, so there's no interest here in maintaining that one.
Especially because Glenton mentioned that they are willing to build a simple free version one.
Yeah, and there's not, of course, in this case it's a provider, so there's no loss of data, right? If you switch.
Exactly.
So for me, I'm like, okay, if there's
so I have no knowledge about Active Directory. Maybe it's a stupid question, but migrating from that to the other one will keep everything working fine. There's no data concerns at all.
I think almost everything, because there is something like a list of profile properties to sync. For example, one company wants to sync only the first name and the last name, and other company wants to sync the full user profile property. But more or less, the migration it's not difficult because it's only simple provider.
Okay, and that would be something we could keep the old one where it is and document that this is no longer maintained, and here's the instructions on how to migrate to your module, right?
Yeah, something like that.
That's something you could write?
Yes. We
Awesome.
can create something. I think DNN needs a good open source Active Directory plugin.
Right.
Barry, is it possible to use your module together with the form authentication? Because we have a mixed setup where our employees log in with the Active Directory, and all the other users, a few thousands, use the form provider.
I didn't understand everything, but you were talking about the authentication at the top of the LDAP protocol.
No. I'm using the normal DNN authentication,
yes,
and also the Active Directory provider, so the users can decide which way to go. Is this possible with the Glenton solution?
Yes. Of course, it's possible. No problem with that. Just user just needs to switch from DNN to Active Directory owned, or from Active Directory to DNN provider. That's all. Even if he put the Active Directory username, the plugin will automatically recognize that this username is Active Directory username, but not the DNN. So it will check the Active Directory database.
Thanks.
That's
okay. So just to put a point to this one, it's ready now if I want to do an upgrade to your module, or it's in the works?
Can you repeat? Sorry.
If I have a DNN5 website, let's say, using the Active Directory provider that came with it, and everything is working, I want to upgrade to your module. Is that something ready today, or it's something you have to work on?
if you have a DNN version 5, you can't upgrade to our Glanton plugin. And my question is, if we build a new open source plugin, what the DNN minimum version should be, because lots of DNN methods are deprecated.
Mhm.
So for example, if we today create a plugin that will work with DNN 5, possibly it will not work with the DNN 8 because the method like sign in user doesn't exist in DNN
Yes.
8 or vice versa.
I don't have what it takes to test it, but I'm guessing the old Active Directory module will work fine up to some version of DNN, which I expect 9.1. Not sure at all, but let's say it works until 9.1. From 9.1, they could upgrade to your module before going to 9.2.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that's something you've tried, or?
Yes, our plugin is working with the DNN 8 and above.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And migration documentation, it's something you could put. So upgrade up to DNN
Yes.
8 or 9.1, and then do this, that, and remove the old module, right?
Right. Yep.
Awesome. You can submit a pull request with that documentation.
Okay.
Awesome. So that will solve the Active Directory module. Next module is DNN forums versus active forums. Like I said earlier, I know there was a migration. I even remember doing that migration back then, and I can no longer find that document. Anybody has an idea? No? It's still a big
No.
quest.
Sorry.
Which
I
one was
know-
that? I'm sorry.
From old
from
forums
forums?
to active forums.
Oh yeah, I know it exists. I looked myself. I couldn't find anything.
I've not
Okay.
done that.
Does anybody know who maintains that? Because I know there's been recent activity. There's been a fix for DNN 9.2. Nobody that we personally know here.
So it originally come from Will Morganwick, but and he may be interested in getting back involved. That's possible.
Yes.
Since he's no longer with Corp. I think Mitch Sellers made some contributions to it at some point, if my memory serves me correctly, but I don't remember who else.
So maybe Mitchell Sellers.
I've never really used active forums, but do you agree that active forums should be the default module to be used for forums? Or
Well, it was superior. It was superior to the old forums, put it that way. That was a hands down. So that's an easy decision. Whether the old forums or the active forums, it was going to be active forums. But since then, we're now 10 years down the line, and you have to ask yourself where this all sits.
Yeah, I mean, I think this became open source because of the acquisition of Will's company by DNN Corp those years ago, and it was somewhat maintained, but not actively.
Exactly.
But it is a bigger question for sure of whether this is viable or not. But it is by far, or was by far, the superior solution.
At this point in time, the thing is that there was an upgrade script that we just need to find, and it works on the DNN 9.2. So I think it's a correct solution for someone who has a lot of forum content that wants to upgrade to the DNN 9.2 now.
So let's see. The last pull request on active forums is like 11 days ago. So project seems to be relatively active. Then in May there's a guy called Joachim Andersson from Sweden who seems to have made a lot of changes to the code base.
I'm sorry, but where are you finding that?
On the GitHub, active forums /active forums.
Okay, I didn't notice the GitHub repository. Okay, okay, awesome. So I'm gonna contact whoever is there.
I know that there a few people actually actively maintaining this, but they are like for many modules. I mean, and this is of course the big one. They're stuck in the sense of porting that to a newer technology, a newer development pattern is such a tremendous amount of work that probably they're just maintaining and fixing bugs.
Yes, I totally agree, and there's more changes to come. So yeah, there's going to be another huge technology shift that in the next years, and we have to see if we have enough time beforehand to at least keep the data. You know, the model could be totally rebuilt as long as we have some migration paths for people to not lose their data, I think is acceptable.
That's for sure. That's our goal.
Awesome. So for the other point, I guess when I reach whoever needs to be reached here regarding that, that person is going to be able to answer that question too. I know DNN acquired Active modules, and I'm pretty sure Active Forums falls under the same license and copyright that DNN. But whoever we contact there will see the polls about moving that to the DNN community GitHub.
Yeah, it seems that Jason Brunkens is the man behind it currently.
Jason
Brunken, he's got the most commits, but it's already a while ago.
Okay. Awesome. Which brings us to the end of this meeting. I had an addendum section. Anything that we want to add to this meeting? We're good.
Just one question on that point. Should we create any kind of I don't know, a feedback form for people to suggest open forms modules that we can create new? Apart from the list that we have, should we encourage people to suggest, guys, the DNN community desperately needs a module for what?
Exactly, and then bsense builds it.
Yeah,
I suggest that.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Well,
I think at some point in time it would be interesting to get feedback on that, but I think the first objective would be to make the current modules that we decide about compatible with DNN 9.2.
Okay.
Yes. And the last thing, about meetings. What do you guys feel? I'm totally up for having weekly short meetings. If there's 2 or 3 persons or 10 persons, I don't care, but at least we can discuss this week's issues. I know it's hard to coordinate times. The first meeting, I wanted to have as much people as possible, so I made a survey, and I really found the time and day that we could have the most people. Any thoughts on that? What would you like to see as involvement in regular meetings?
Yeah, once a week is quite often for me. I already have 3 meetings now for DNN, so that would be number 4. And just to make sure that I understand the point of having the meetings. The point of having the meetings is to make sure we progress, right, and not all issues are dealt with. So it will be mostly going through pending pull requests or issues being reported, etc., between modules. Is that correct? That is what you intend to handle?
Whatever subject needs to be talked as a group. Okay, there's one thing. There's technical development stuff. I know everybody has different knowledge about different things, and we're spanning Visual Basic, weak types to C# to build processes and technology moving forward. So nobody knows everything. So I think there's technical discussions that could happen. I think there's directions of this and that module. I think there's all kinds of things we can discuss, awareness and whatever. But I know weekly, I'm not going to have everybody every week, that's for sure. But I'm go for it if people join, but if I'm gonna be alone every week, maybe we should put it bi-weekly or monthly.
Yeah.
I would say that bi-weekly would be okay for the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go bi-weekly. And did people like the survey so we can schedule what time works best for everybody?
No, I prefer a fixed time.
Fixed.
Like this one. Yeah.
People prefer fixed time. So same as now in 2 weeks seems to be a nice time for Europe and America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So 2 weeks from now, we'll schedule another meeting. Now to contact everybody, blog posts look right, or is everybody here on Slack?
Yep.
And all on the dev group.
DAG, Development Advisory Group.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Clint,
we have a channel on that. So
core modules. Yeah.
Clint, if there's someone who wants to get involved and is not in the core modules Slack group, do I have the permission to invite them? Do I have to ask you? How does it work?
You should.
you can add them.
Yeah.
I can do it.
Invite people. If you have issues, just let me know.
Or me.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So we'll synchronize there for meeting dates and stuff, and anybody that's not there, I'm gonna just invite them.
But Clint, you can set up the bi-weekly meeting on Zoom.
Well, I can. This is actually Daniel's Zoom, so
Yeah, it's on my Zoom. I have a
okay.
Zoom, paid account too, so no
okay.
there.
Excellent.
If I die before the next 2 weeks, just set up a new one.
okay.
Then let's do it that way.
Awesome. And I'm gonna. What do you guys think as far as? I think it's good for awareness to publish these videos of those meetings to be transparent, and
No problem.
I think it's good for
Absolutely.
driving involvement.
If you could find a way to make that appear under the work of DNN Corp and the development team, that would really help. So then, because that's a kind of a win-win. So on the one hand, the development team shows that we're doing something. On the other hand, it's easier for people also to find it.
Yes. How should I go about that?
Ask Clint.
Okay, Clint, I'll talk to you in Slack after the meeting to know where's the best place to put this.
All right.
Clint meeting recording. And as far as keeping an agenda and minutes, I'm good for doing it. Should we make that public too with the video?
Yes, and if you want, we can, because I already use Google Drive for stuff related to the development group. We can have a folder there specifically for stuff that we do in this team, and then it's a bit easier to kind of drop in these minutes of meetings, etc., to refer to afterwards. What do you think?
I kind of lost your voice there. I don't know if it's a
okay.
local problem here or.
No. It's
Can someone else speak just to see if it's me or Peter having a problem?
Hello. I am. Can people hear me?
Yeah, I can hear Peter. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, can you hear me, Daniel?
No, he cannot hear you.
He's okay. So it's between us and North.